Good morning, Wellspring. I didn't want to boom and scare you all, so good morning, Wellspring. So welcome everyone here and all of you out in Zoom land. Glad you could join us today for our Sunday, May 21st, 2023 service. I can't believe it's 2000. It's like it's science fiction, and here we are. This is cool. We made it. Okay. Well, my name's Vicki Avery, and I am part of the board of trustees. They entrust that to me. Can you believe that? Okay. We have a few announcements like we always do. Early Birds meets Sunday mornings at 9:30 via Zoom, and the link is in the weekly email and on the website. And we're winding down on the book we have been reading, so we will be deciding on a new book. So please come join us. It's just such an amazing group and such wonderful, deep conversations. So everyone's welcome. And our upcoming speakers next week is Reverend Kamatara from Albuquerque, and she's part of our spiritual leadership team. And then in June 4th is our own Dr. Edward. The 11th is Reverend Sandy Scott. If you missed her last week, she's awesome, so make sure you catch her. And then on the 18th is Reverend Bram Watkins, and then the 25th is to be determined. It'll be a surprise. Okay, Thursday evening group is not meeting this week and will resume next week, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Talk to Edward or Cleona for the link or for more information. The May get-together is today. It's a potluck after the service, so please join us. There's plenty of food. I heard that we have some lasagna that Brenda made, so come join us. The New Thought Ladies Luncheon is this coming Thursday, May 25th at CSL 11:30. Bring a dish to share. And we have something to discuss with you all. The Board of Trustees has received information that an organization has sent out to churches all around the country to allow churches to get at a discounted price a defibrillator. And we talked about it at the board meeting and we've discussed it. We were talking about maybe seeing about having a CPR class for folks who wanted it, who don't have that skill set. And we decided that it might be more beneficial and less physically exhausting, instead of doing the hands-on CPR, to check into getting the AED or defibrillator. It's always, I feel it's something that it's good to have it if we need it, and if we don't use it, that's okay too, but at least we have it and could save a life if any one of us would have a health emergency. So maybe after the service we could, if you have thoughts or opinions, please let one of the board members know so that we can either move forward with this or table it, okay? And lastly, our prayer team remains ready to serve and to support you. And you may submit a request via our webpage, or we have some prayer requests at the back there. You can fill one out and give it to Edward. And our prayer team meets virtually on Tuesday afternoons at 4:15 to pray with you. And you may consider sitting in your quiet space during that time, because we know that we are one in spirit and the energy of prayer knows no limit. So now for our invocation. We now invoke Great Spirit, Mother, Father, God, the universal divine that is in this room with us now. always with us, and flows in, through, and around each and every one of us. We are grateful for this time to come together as we move forward into the changing season from spring into summer, as we flow in the ebb and flow of life. We know that everything is in divine order, and we are grateful to know this and to be open to receive all the loving gifts of the universe. As we say together, and so it is. And now, if you're able to stand, please join us for the Song of Joy. It's in every one of us. Our affirmation is one from the past from our dear Reverend Sam. So our vision, to elevate spiritual consciousness in our world. Our mission, to support individual spiritual quests through celebration, study, counsel, loving fellowship, and service. And our affirmation, God in me attracts others who reveal a rich blend of love, joy, and fellowship. I know that my path is an expression of my sacred self. Therefore, I grow with full intensity. My personal journey is a blessing and a light to all, and so it is. Now, it's time for Adam and Doug Adamz. I'm verbally dyslexic today, sorry about that. Whoever he is, he's great. And we're so grateful to have him here with us. And actually, we have do we have a trio this time? Yes. Peter, Paul. I'll leave that up to you to decide. Put your name tags on. The three guys.
Well, there's so much talent here. I thought it would be, shame not to employ them all. This is a brand new song. This is a world premiere, in fact. First day of it ever being performed. You better wait till you hear it. Do, 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 do. 1, 2, 3, go. There's a little fountain of peace in my heart, in my heart. There's a little fountain of peace in my heart. The water's so sweet to taste, it might lend my life a little more grace, and make the world a little happier place in my heart. There's a little fountain of peace in your heart, in your heart. There's a little fountain of peace in your heart. That little fountain of peace, whose waters shall never cease. If you tend it, it will increase in your heart. Maybe someday this little fountain will overflow and spill its shimmering waters on this old dusty world we know. A fountain in my heart, a stream in the neighborhood, a river running through this land, an ocean all around the world. Oh! Someday the little fountain will overflow and spill its shimmering waters all over this dusty world we know. A fountain in my heart, a stream in the neighborhood, a river running through this land, an ocean all around the world. There's a little fountain of peace in my heart, in my heart. There's a little fountain of peace in my heart. Water so sweet to taste, it might lend my life a little grace, and make the world a little happier place in my heart. That's great. That's great.
CD coming out.
Yeah. Edwin and Barry helping me out, of course.
You were so right with your comment earlier. There is such talent here. Thank you, everybody. That was great. So today's reading is from the Science of Mind April edition of the magazine Science of Mind. And the reading is entitled, Embrace the Ebb and Flow. Balance and harmony are buzzwords used to describe how to live a meaningful life. Balance implies equal and opposing forces that must be perfectly arranged to avoid tipping in either direction. The danger in a balanced life is that it requires constant judgment, compassion, or comparison and juggling. Harmony means forming a pleasing and consistent whole, Now, wow, isn't that a lot easier than balance? Okay, so how often does your life form a pleasing and consistent whole where all the parts work together? Balance or harmony as life goals can lead to shame, self-judgment, and despair by advocating for something unobtainable, perfection. Instead, it is preferred ebb and flow. Ebb and flow is a recurrent or rhythmical pattern of coming or going or decline and regrowth. Think of tidal action or the behavior of plants. Our lives ebb and flow. Sometimes everything seems to work. We feel curious, happy, and at other times we feel stagnant, dormant, melancholy. Life seems hard. If you look back over your life, you will see this pattern. In spring, you see yellow clouds of pretty flowers that bloom outside the window. In summer, lush green. In fall, a riot of reds, oranges, and yellows. And in winter, bare branches against a gray sky. So too, our lives blossom, grow lush, and become bare. There is no magic answer to life. It ebbs and flows. Appreciate where you are, ebb or flow, without judgment. We don't judge a flower for not blooming all year or for a tree for being bare in winter. And the daily affirmation is, today I embrace the ebbs and flows of life. I know where I am right now is the perfect place for me. And so it is. And now it's my great privilege and honor and great joy that I get to introduce Jeanne Gehringer, our speaker for today. Welcome back, Jeanne.
Welcome, all of you, and I am so pleased that you've invited me back to speak to you, your lovely souls and your lovely personas. Today's talk is going to be on liminal space. Now, for those of you who don't know what liminal space is, let's start with the architectural definition, because it's an architectural term. Liminal space is the physical space between one destination and the next. So in architecture, that's hallways, airports, and streets. In something like this church and most churches, the vestibule, when you come in, is technically liminal space. In medieval or before those times, those spaces were actually created not just with two sets of doors in order to keep the weather out, but it was created to give a space for people to leave their outside world behind before they entered the sacred space of the church, a transition, if you will. So in architecture, that is what liminal space is. Now, when I read this definition from Wikipedia or whatever, and it said the airport is liminal because it's a space in between, and I thought, well, they didn't spend all night at Dallas Airport with me last week, did they? So it turned out to be rather a destination for a while, and a good test of my spirituality and everything else on handling Dallas for 24 hours. So also, a definition for liminal space is threshold, the state of being betwixt and between, where the old world has been left and behind, and we have not yet arrived at what is to come. So I want to take this concept of liminal space into a spiritual and metaphysical sense, because I haven't seen any writings on this. So I thought, okay, with a great invitation to speak, a little audience, we can go there. So psychologists do, of course, recognize periods of transition between as liminal spaces, whether they call it that or not, usually between life phases, standing in a doorway between two phases of your life. So spiritually, psychologically, let's look at some examples. Divorce. At the point where you're divorcing and leaving that life behind, and you've not yet entered into what your new life is. For a lot of people, that is a very, very painful period. And even the person who wanted to end the marriage, it is still liminal space for them, because they are leaving the old behind. They're leaving the marriage for reasons, but those reasons, I have never seen them not include lack of fulfillment of the dream they had for that marriage. So whether they want to go or not, they are leaving that dream. I said divorce, but it can be a breakup. It can be from children all in the house to no children in the house. Or it can be from an empty house with the couple or yourself, and now including children. Time in between. A time from caretaking someone else for a long, long time till that person is done with their journey, before you've recalibrated to you by yourself again. And those of us who have been in those positions know that can take some time. And it can be because of the amount of years of caretaking, or the amount of effort, or the amount of which your life was overcome by theirs. Loss of parents, loss of siblings, loss of a job, a career, a title. Usually back in the military, when a man retires and say he is an officer, a colonel, or a general, they really don't transition well for quite a while, because their title and their career totally defined them. And they almost don't know what to do with themselves, other than follow their wife around and telling her how to vacuum. And that does not go over well. Women officers don't tend to have that problem, for a lot of reasons. Women, as we all know who are women, are usually much more multifaceted. We've been taking care of the family, the kids, other things. So if we lose something, like a title of Mrs. or a title of mother, or a job, we have all these other things that are still there, still part of who we are. I'll say old-fashioned because it's changing, the old-fashioned male had the one thing, his work. And that is changing, and thankfully. To be much more multifaceted, I think, is good for the soul. Career loss. A lot of that for different reasons. Loss of a home. Even if you're planning to move, when you leave that home before you're in your next one, that is in liminal space. What about displacement? I had friends who were caught up in the, they called it the fire in paradise. Forget what name they called it, but the fire that took over the whole town. So I had friends that lost their home in that, and other friends who never came back. So the displacement, you were fine this morning, tonight you have no home, and now you've got to go find somewhere to be and how to set yourself up without even knowing what help is coming your way, or if it is. Serious physical energy or health things. When you are in between being well and healthy and an injury or surgery to now you've got to recuperate and get well, and you're not moving like you used to. Or like I have a friend who is now in, she has, I'm going to say had, cancer, and is in the final round of chemo, which has been just unbelievably tough on her. So this period of her life between when she was healthy pre-cancer, before we get to post-cancer, is very much a liminal space of all treatments, all medical. And a lot of us, I mean, none of us in here are spring chickens. We've all been through some of the things I'm talking about. And let's talk about COVID. I think that put us in one heck of a liminal space. Suddenly, whoa, we're totally shut down. I mean, quickly, don't go to church, don't go here, don't go there. Learn how to Zoom if you don't know how already. Before that, Zoom was not a well-known word in the vocabulary, and now it really is. I believe we are not yet out of that era. We are still living in the liminal space of COVID. For example, how many of these chairs were full before COVID hit? And how many are full now? And I don't know if you all were Zooming before COVID, or that became an additive during this liminal space to try to keep things going. The impacts of the COVID era are still hitting us in terms of finding certain things to buy, and in terms of just a lot of things. So we are really in that liminal space. We're in the middle of it. And because we're in the middle of it, we among us can see a lot of the changes and what it's done. But it will take some years past to see the total big significance of what all we've been through. And during COVID, many of us felt things in different ways. Some were not affected. Some felt fine. Others very much got put into a space of loneliness and isolation that their soul and themselves weren't ready to handle that much of. So there's a lot going on there. So those are some examples of how we look at liminal space as far as what it is. But let's look at how it feels to us psychologically, how it feels to us as it's happening. Most folks are very uncomfortable with it. Most folks are incredibly uncomfortable with this in-between. The past is gone. The future's not here yet. We're a culture of do. We are a culture of move ahead, make it happen. And we're in this Zoom waiting room, waiting, and the little screen says the host will get to you in a moment, right? And that's where we are. Are we as a culture good at that? No. How long? Maybe I can go get a cup of coffee. You still there. We are a do culture. So we're very, very uncomfortable with these transitions. We're uncomfortable with not knowing. We're uncomfortable with not doing. And that puts us in a spiritual and psychological unhappy place, does it not? So, what I see people doing as they hit whatever liminal space we're talking about is they fill the space with activities, with people, with doing. Oh boy, we can really binge on Netflix. Okay, we can do this, we can do that. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll just buzz around and fill this whole space with activities. Some may be meaningless, but it's to fill the time, because we as a culture are not good with empty time. We are not good at that at all. So, what we want to discuss today is, let's figure how to handle liminal space other than with Netflix, or other than with endless going around town, going to different places to take care of our do list, going to every store in town because it takes up the space and the timing, and we feel we're doing something. So rather than ignoring it and getting through it as fast as possible, I suggest we honor it. Let it be. Sit into it like a difficult yoga pose. Oh, you know how uncomfortable that is. And the yoga instructor says, sit into it, and you're thinking, I don't want to fall over, I don't want to fall over. Sit into it, sit into it. Be versus do. Be in that space. What can it teach us or tell us? See it as a gift of time and space to explore and contemplate, to heal the wounded places so that we can recover the full use of our heart. What can we do to say farewell to the old and make ourselves open to what comes? To see this as a place to recalibrate and rediscover and allow in new aspects of ourselves. So how do we assist ourselves while in this most uncomfortable and for some people excruciating liminal space, waiting room? Here are some ideas. Of course, I am, so to speak, preaching to the choir when I now say daily spiritual practice. Most of you probably have that, but some folks maybe not. Even that may be that with their life the way it is, they don't do any kind of a daily spiritual practice. I really suggest a daily practice, even if it is a minute long, to reset yourself as a nice marker of time during this period. Whether it is starting the day with intention, whether it is reading from our wonderful books that she did the nice reading from, but a daily spiritual practice, and it doesn't have to be long. Meditation, praying, grounding oneself. For those of us who are lucky enough to have grass around our homes or somewhere, to take off our shoes and literally walk through the grass and ground ourselves in with the earth. Walk a labyrinth. There's a couple that are open in town all the time. There's one over at Unitarian Church. There's one over at down on South Main at the Holy Cross Retreat that are open all the time. And walking a labyrinth balances you. It is meant to balance chakras. Tune into the moon phases. Some of us do that and some of us don't. I like to do that. We're having people pass out a nice little fun graph of the different moon phases and spiritually how to reach out to them. That's from one of my favorite magazines, Spirituality and Health, in the March-April 2023 issue. And We just finished a really fantastic new moon. The energies are still really very much there. New moon, as you know, is about setting new intentions. So as we're going through liminal space, a period, it's a great time to set new, going along with the moon phases. Astrology, if you don't have a favorite person to listen to their podcast or however you get that information, afterwards I can talk to you about some of my favorite, that find one that really, really resonates with you. That how they're explaining things, you're going, oh my God, that's how I feel. And you have much better language than I do, whoever's doing it, to find one that really resonates. So this last new moon, the Taurus new moon, was also very much about new options and chapters and opportunities, and new cosmic codes are coming in that have not been met in this lifetime. And that is coming in with that, and the very powerful fixed Grand Cross that's coming in on May 24th. So when we tune into these things, it helps us make sense out of what we're feeling inside. And some of these energies are also overwhelming and confusing. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and confused in that time, know that it's probably a lot going on there too, and it's not just you. I have in my writings now I wish I had brought it, a meditation I had made up on how to balance ourselves with Earth, cosmic, and galactic energies. I'll try to remember it right now and say it. And it is a really good one to do when you're feeling out of balance. And it's basically, we're asking our spirit team to balance our energies with the energies of the Earth, the cosmos, the galaxy, and any other energies that may be affecting us non-beneficially or putting us out of balance. And that we basically kindly ask our spirit team to put us in balance to a degree where we feel good, not to a degree where we are totally out of whack. If it's out of whack, that we are too. But to put us in balance to where these energies are now beneficial to us. And that is a good one to say every day if you're kind of feeling this. In my practice, I've had people who feel these things very clearly come up and say to me, when they've been doing that every day, they don't feel so out of balance all the time. It really is quite effective. I really believe in ritual. Make ritual to say farewell to things. Ritual to say there's an end. Whether it's a marriage, a house, whatever. Make up your own ritual in your own way to close that energy. For example, years ago, my folks lived in town. They're both deceased now. And they had a really big house out in Fair Acres. It was very large. And we had built a labyrinth outside and a medicine wheel. And it was huge community space in it. And from there, we devised the Southwest Dowsing Conference, which we had for years out at Holy Cross Retreat. We devised the dowsing chapter, which was active for many years. And we brought dowsing labyrinths and all kinds of things into this town. And it was great. We had people driving through the country, stopping, brought in great guest speakers to our dowsing, and did all kinds of things. And from that, a lot of good happened. Then after my mother died and then my father moved out, I had the task of emptying the house, closing it off, and selling it. So for me, it wasn't just knowing that my parents as a unit were gone. That was over. That house was over. But also what we did for dowsing at that point was over. It was closing a huge chapter. So I went into the empty house the day before we closed, when it was all empty and all done and clean, and I sat down in the middle of the living room floor, and I brought in pictures of all the family members and dowsing stuff that had happened in the house, spread them around, lit candles. I think I brought in a couple of rocks from the medicine wheel we had made, and just dowsed and asked for thanked Spirit for what this house provided. Thanked it and honored its presence for what all it helped make happen, and honored all who were in there, and that phase was done. And then through dowsing, I cleared any non-beneficial energies that were in the house. Just like any family, there were some heated things and some fights, and there was a lot of love, and there was a lot of both. So cleared any, and then I filled it with warm, loving energy for whoever next should inhabit it. So we remove and we bring in. And I might have burned some of the pictures in a bowl. Burning is a great clearer. And I was worried, it was wrenching for me to let go of that whole part of my life. Not just them as a couple and my parents gone, but all what we did is dowsing, because now I didn't have a team, and it would be a whole different dowsing journey with how I teach or whatever I was going to do. And it was wrenching. And I'll tell you, I got done with that ceremony, and it felt good. It felt done. I've never had the desire to go back. And of course I set up energy that the right people would come and buy it. And they did. With that great space, a nice couple came and it was like 5 acres with a huge bunch outside. They made a dog training center there. It was great. So, ritual, very, very important. Dissolve energy connections that are non-beneficial to anything you're leaving behind. We're all metaphysical. We all have different ways to do that. Dissolve them. Let them go. Importantly, make sure your chakras, meridians, and aura are all fully functional and working correctly. Meridians can really get torn apart when you've lost a family member or a divorce or partnership, because you can get entwined in meridians. Right after my dad died, he literally had just died. Spirit came into me and said, spoke to me, Jeanne, he's gone now. That's just the flesh that's left. Said, heal your meridians. You have been deeply embedded. Get yourself back to your total self now. I took out my pendulum, called in my spirit team, and said, put my meridians into their divine working order. Anytime we're in relationships or anything, or even a business, our meridians can get entwined. That's why when I see people who are this is a death of a long-term relationship, that they literally feel ragged, they feel torn, they feel torn. That's the meridians that are torn. So healing those is really important. Does that mean you're kicking your beloved spouse to the curb? No. I had one lady ask that after I asked her to do that when her husband had just died. I said, no, we are not kicking Randy to the curb. No, we are letting him go on to where he needs to go on, and we are getting you totally good to where you can heal. And I say in this time to read and look at things widely. We get inspiration and help from all kinds of places. A little sentence here, a little line in a TV show or this or that there. So So far we've looked at liminal space as a place between two phases of life that is not comfortable and that may include handling loss. Now, as a final note, I want to give a concept that came to me on, let's look at liminal space as a purposeful place to be that you create. Okay? So for example, a time of the day where you can be totally quiet, in quiet reflection, without a do list or anything going through your head. You're just looking out at the arroyo or sitting in meditation, but you are totally in that quiet. Now for me, that's first thing in the morning when I get up, because I never have woken up quickly. I wake up very slowly and I'm in other worlds and know it. And I love that time. I call it me, tea, and thee. I make a pot of tea, take it out on one of my porches, and it's just source and I and tea, and whatever comes in, comes in. I'm foggy enough that this world isn't totally here, that world isn't totally gone. I'm right in between. I'm in liminal space. And I love that place. So I invite you to create that for yourself. Also to set aside maybe more of a time, once a week or once a quarter or once a month, of several hours or a full day of this type of reflection of nothingness to allow your soul to restore. And it is amazing what happens in this nothing space to allow things to percolate and come up. For me, I normally keep Sundays sacred. That's the whole day. I don't usually want to be in anyone else's energy. It's just a whole day of source me and a lot of tea. I may switch to wine later. But it is about honoring this reflective space and what it can do for us. So what I would like to leave you with is a concept that you can devise liminal space for yourself as a wonderful restorative spiritual practice. And adding into the reading that we were given earlier, see it as a recognizable and honored space between the ebb and the flow where things happen. Very, very good things happen. And I wish you all of the wonderful awareness and light that comes from that space. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I can do this.
You're an engineer.
Thank you, Jeanne. Yeah, it's really, right now for me, just bringing myself kind of, I didn't realize, and I walked up here, I had to catch up with myself. So we'll do our affirmative prayer now. So as we've been in this space of openness with nothing particular to do, only to be, we acknowledge and we feel the presence of Source, of oneness, in this room, throughout our Zoom membership and those who are listening to this later on the video online. We tap into that space. We allow it to touch into us, into our mind, into our heart, into our bodies. From that perspective, it is all God, it is all good, and we are leaves floating on the lake of consciousness. So we also know that friends and family and members of our community here who are dealing with either physical challenges or mental challenges, it doesn't really matter what the challenge is. We just know that those who have specifically asked for help for prayer work and those who've only thought and wondered if prayer would work for them, we know that this energy that has been created here today goes out to them because there are no limits. There's no time and space in consciousness. So we just hold this sense of perfection for everyone in our community. We lift each and every one of us. We lift ourselves, we lift our neighbors, and we know that as we do that, we make it a little easier for the person down the street or across the country or across the world to touch more deeply into their magnificence and to touch into the oneness that they are a part of. We give great thanks that we are here today, that we understand how consciousness works, that we understand this philosophy. We understand the love and the joy and the peace that is flowing through each and every one of us. And we know that all is well in the kingdom. And we release anything that looks less than that, knowing that the divine plan for each and every one of us is perfection. So again, we give thanks and we let it go, knowing that it is being taken care of even as we speak. And so it is. Now we have some more music. Thank you, Doug. I don't know how you're going to top what you did earlier, but we'll see. Oh, we got the trio back too, right?
Bring up my singing partners here, Ebb and Flo. And everybody else. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Well, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Way up on the mountaintop, I'm gonna let it shine. Well, way up on the mountaintop, I'm gonna let it shine. Down by the riverside, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. early in the morning, look out, I'm gonna let it shine. Everybody, everywhere I go, I find somebody who needs a love line. I'm gonna let it shine. Sing! Lovers, million kilowatt, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Well, just a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. But this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. But this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Thank you, everybody.
Well, since I'm up here, that means I get to pray over the offering today, which is something I really enjoy doing. So, Dove, if you wouldn't mind, you can just bring the offering basket forward, and if anybody needs to add something to it, catch her on the way up. All right, so Dove, just sit there and hold it, and everyone hold your hands up, because we know that as we do this every Sunday, as we bring this offering forward, either virtually or in person, it is being multiplied. Our basket, our abundance is overflowing. We know that these gifts support our community here, support our speakers, our musicians, pay for the lights and the heat and the cooling. And also, we give 10% of everything we receive to the larger community, because we believe that we are part of the flow. This abundance is ours, but is ours to do with and be good stewards of. So we give great thanks for all the contributions that everyone, all the offerings that everyone has given, either via our Zoom, our link on our website, or through the mail or whatever. We just see this multiplying, and we give thanks. And thank you, Dove. And there are a number of folks who have contributed to today's production. My gosh, the list is almost endless today. We've got our techies in the back that have been taking care of the camera and sharing the screen and Zoom and so forth. So we appreciate your contribution. And as Jeanne said earlier, going on to Zoom added a few jobs to every Sunday. But anyway, we really appreciate those who've been supporting us in Zoom for such a long time now. And we also appreciate you all joining us on Zoom today. And if you want to stay around for just a little bit after the Zoom meeting, you can visit with one another. But the rest of us are going to go across to the social hall for a potluck. So that is fantastic. We appreciate that. It's just wonderful to build community. That's what we do in our monthly larger community events, and this is one of those as well. So thank you all for that. Now please stand as you are able and read with me the benediction, and followed by our peace song. Spirit in the midst of us is mighty. Joy, peace, and eternal life are our true nature, and flow through us into the world. And so it is.